Welcome to Faith, Fiction, and Folklore, or as we like to call it, the Tri-F Podcast, where we try not to have the podcast up. Yes, I think that I want to give a shout out to that first video really quick. That was a thing of beauty.
That was hilarious.
That first video was Harry Potter North Korea Wizard by Demon Flying Fox. I'm going to say that again. Harry Potter North Korea Wizard by Demon Flying Fox. So, that made me feel special. All right, so...
You are special.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So, how are you today, Mr. Trevor?
I'm okay. How are you?
I am okay. I have no complaints. We've got a big night tonight, which is probably one of the reasons why we're so late.
How big is it?
It's a big night. Big
That's
night.
what she said.
Let's see. Darwin 110. Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime doll. Hello. Welcome aboard. So,
hello, Darwin.
all right. So we are going to start off today with our final video on NDEs. So we've tried to do one on heaven, one on hell, one that was kind of in the middle, and now we're going to discuss the subject kind of more broadly from a, I guess you would say, a scientific, perspective. And yeah, we're going to talk about that, and then we are going to discuss how George Orwell hated H.G. Wells, and he wrote an essay titled Wells, Hitler, and the World State. So we'll be reading that article and discussing how H.G. Wells was a terrible human being.
You mean you'll be reading it?
Hmm?
You'll be reading it?
I will be reading it. Okay. Fear not. I won't. I would have sent it to you if you were going to read it.
Oh, okay.
And then guess who's back, Mr. Trevor?
Back in black?
Yes.
Hit the sack?
Very black. Amon Hillman.
Oh,
Apparently,
really?
yes, apparently you and Cody were right about him being a demon man. So...
A demon man?
A demon man, yes.
Oh, okay.
He was into your... He was sharing a talent with your Bigfoot friends. He has a specific talent. He could teleport. But we'll get into that later.
Teleporting demons.
Teleporting demons. So then, lastly, we will be discussing Epstein because I promised I would not let it go. But Trevor, I told myself I wasn't going to let the Three Stooges logo replace the overhead, overlay, whatever. I wasn't gonna put up the Three Stooges logo until October. I made myself that vow. I almost did it today though, because it was a crazy week. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that at the end of the show.
Heck yeah. Did you know my birthday's in October?
Your birthday's in October?
Yeah.
Well, happy birthday.
So maybe we can give the Three Stooges birthday hats.
There you go. That'll work. Darwin 1108 says, it's from Spaceballs, duh. LOL. I recognized it from Looney Tunes. They had a singing frog that would do like a kick dance and had a top hat and would sing the exact same song. But we're old. Yep. So anyway.
We're old.
So let's get into our first episode for the evening, or part, I guess you would say. So we're going to start off with NDEs. And this video is on the YouTube channel Discovery Science. Oh, Darwin 118. Good stream, by the way. No lag so far. Thank you very much. We're trying.
Yes, thank you.
We're trying to fix that.
I'm trying to listen to it too, and so far it sounds good.
Great. So this video is called Is the Soul Real? A neurosurgeon explores the evidence. And this is from the 2005 Dallas Conference on Science and Faith. The YouTube channel is Discovery Science. It's Michael Egner talking about whether the mind and the brain are the same thing or whether or not they're different. And during that discussion, he talks about near-death experiences and kind of some of the common themes around them. So I thought we would take a few minutes to react to that video. So, Mr. Trevor, are you ready?
No.
Well, you're gonna have to adapt.
Well, I gotta wait for the lag to catch up.
Don't say that. Don't say that. We're doing good so far. Oh my goodness. All right, here we go.
Near-death experiences are sort of the paradigmatic example of a separation between the soul or the mind and the brain. And while some near-death experiences may be not genuine, they may be hallucinations or whatever, there's no doubt that there is a real core of real experiences. They're probably about 20% of near-death experiences.
So,
So why would he say that somebody would have a hallucination if they're about to die?
because some people believe that as the brain is shutting down, it tries to comfort itself by, showing relatives and that kind of thing to give the person a sense of peace before they expire. That's one theory anyway. Or the lack of oxygen would do something similar. There's a whole bunch of theories to try to explain away NDEs. So that's what he's referring to.
Gotcha.
Are veridical, meaning they can be checked. The person knows things that occurred when they were dead, things that went on inside the room, etc. The probably most famous near-death experience was Pam Reynolds, who was an aneurysm patient, operated on in 1991. And in order to safely operate on the aneurysm, her surgeon had to stop her heart after cooling her body down to about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And that gave him about 30 minutes to fix the aneurysm. He drained all the blood out of her brain, fixed the aneurysm, and then rewarmed her and started her heart again. And she survived and did very well, actually. She said that in the recovery room, she said, I watched the operation. He said, what? You were brain dead. You couldn't possibly watch the operation. So she said that as soon as her brain went dead, she popped out of her body, floated up to the ceiling, watched the surgery. She said that her vision was amazingly accurate, and it was a beautiful scene. And then she told him what he talked about during the surgery. She told him what the instruments looked like and what music was playing in the room during the surgery. And things like this have happened a number of times. So in my view, there's no question that some near-death experiences are very real. The other thing that for me is very convincing is that people have surveyed the literature, and there are thousands of examples of this in the literature, where people go down a tunnel and they see loved ones and relatives at the other end of the tunnel. Nobody in the medical literature who's had a near-death experience has ever seen a living person at the other end of the tunnel. It's not like you kind of want your mother and your mother's still alive and you see her at the other end of the tunnel. Only dead people are at the other end of the tunnel, including people that you didn't know were dead. There are a number of examples of people who were in car accidents where someone in the car died and they didn't know the person died because they were critically injured also, and they saw that person on the other side of the tunnel, but not people in the car who didn't die.
So what do you think of that, Mr. Trevor?
I think that he's right. A lot of experiences, a lot of people have the same experience of where they float above the table or light at the end of the tunnel.
What about seeing only dead people? You've been the one kind of like looking at all the different NDEs for the past several weeks. So have you encountered anything that would verify that in your research?
Yeah, there's lots of people that. I think it was the girl we listened to last week. She talked about the light at the end of the tunnel.
I'm talking about the dead people, only seeing dead people.
Oh, the only dead people?
Yeah.
Yeah, that does seem to be a common theme.
Yeah.
They only see past relatives or...
I find that very interesting.
Yeah, someone else that they haven't seen in years that they only met like one time. They passed away.
I think one of my favorite stories is, this is nothing to do with dead people, but I don't know if it's brought up in this video or not, but somebody was, rising up into the sky as they were severing their mortal coil, let's say, and they saw a pair of shoes on the roof, and they commented about the shoes, and then they went up to the roof and checked, and sure enough, there was a pair of shoes there. I just thought that's very interesting.
Must have been Nargles.
What?
Nargles?
I have no idea what that is.
Luna Lovegood? From Harry Potter?
Oh. Okay, see, look, just because I
people
played
still-
the North Korea Harry
steal
Potter
her
thing, I don't
shoes.
know anything about Harry Potter. I just thought it was
Okay,
funny.
Well, people steal her shoes
Okay.
and then do stuff with them, hide them, and she's like, one of the scenes, Harry is asking where her shoes are, and she leans over and she was like, "It's probably the narwhals."
Oh, okay. I'm sure that plot point went somewhere in the series, but anyway, moving on.
Everybody asks about Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage was a gentleman who, in a work accident in the 19th century, had an iron spike that was driven through his brain. And his personality changed. He was a religious, upstanding man before
I've
this.
heard of this story.
And after this, he wasn't too bad a guy, but he kind of lived the high life a little bit. And people say, well, doesn't that prove that the brain completely controls the mind? And it doesn't. Gage's emotional state changed. But there's no evidence that there was any change in his mathematics or reason or things like that. So obviously, if you have a brain injury, you can have changes in the way you behave. But that doesn't mean that every aspect of the mind comes from the brain. A question that is being...
Okay, well, that's a little bit of a twist. I thought he went further into NDEs here. I guess not. But that's okay. So I did want to plug this because he does go into NDEs in a great amount of detail in the book, The Immortal Mind. Let me change that flipping box a little bit. I hate YouTube. I can't get these boxes right. I despise OBS.
What are we flipping?
I want to get the whole book title in really quick, so give me a second. Let me
Oh, I
adjust
see.
the square here because it's being ridiculous.
The whole book title
Yeah, there we go.
is The Immortal Mind, a neurosurgeon's case for the existence of the soul.
That's right. And in this book, which I just finished reading, he goes a lot more into NDEs, talks more about Pam Reynolds, talks more about a variety of different situations.
Pam
And
Reynolds?
these NDEs that he brings up are actually verified, meaning that they were able to confirm certain details that the person who's going through the experience said during the surgery. So if they have particular tools, the person would describe the tools and everything would be accurate. Or perhaps like what he was saying in the video, they would have like somebody else would have died in a car wreck and that person would meet them in the NDE, but that person couldn't have known the individual was dead. There's a lot of verifiable details that he brings up in this book, and you can get it on Audible or Kindle or hardcover or whatever. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting. It's talking about basically the fact that the mind is not the brain, which we talk a lot about on this show. But yeah, and that's
The
one of the...
mind is only a product of the mind.
Yes, that's kind of like saying water is wet, but thank you. So
Sorry.
it's all right. No, trying to think of another good example of that. But yeah, bottom line is the book goes into a lot more detail on NDEs. One thing that he did say that I guess I would ask, that kind of pick your brain about, is he thought that NDEs were not a good way to really narrow down a particular religion. So it seems like people in other religions will see their religious figures. People who are Christians, they'll see Christ. You got the light at the end of the tunnel. Somebody did posit an interesting theory that Americans will describe the light as a tunnel, but other areas they'll describe it as something else. And so this light at the end of the tunnel may be kind of a culturally dependent way to kind of describe a indescribable phenomena. Like people are struggling to come up with a way to articulate what this light is and all the rest of it. So they're coming up with these analogies.
Yeah.
So a light at the end of the tunnel or being enveloped in light. One culture had some reference to a python. It's just like, but it's all these different ways of describing kind of a path of light of some sort that you get enveloped in. So
Yeah, and one of the ones I asked to, I forgot the guy's name, but he talked about the light at the end of the tunnel, and then he referenced that was Lucifer instead of Christ, or going to the other side, because Lucifer is the angel of light. He disguises himself as the angel of light. And he
Really?
went down that path with it. Yeah.
really?
I'll
So
have to find that one and bring that one.
well, when did he figure out that this light at the end of the tunnel was the devil?
Well, it wound up being someone. He got to the end of the tunnel, and it was a light, and it was an angel as the light, and he thought it was Jesus at first, and he wound up testing the spirit like the Bible says, test the spirit that you meet.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about it tried to deceive him or something like that. It's a very interesting story. I'll have to find it and show it to you. I forgot the guy's name.
That is interesting. So that's one I haven't heard before, that the light at the end of the tunnel is the devil. But anyway, yeah, he was saying that, you know, these guys basically see a variety of experiences. You being the one who's looked at all these NDEs, did you see anything outside of Christianity or outside of like any kind of Western interpretation? Did you happen to get a chance to look at NDEs from other cultures?
I tried to, yeah. And
What'd you find?
a lot of the ones from other cultures, you know, they're in other languages, so I clicked off of those.
Were there no subtitles?
I can't read that fast.
Okay.
But no, what I really looked for was not other cultures, but other like spiritualness, like
Like New Agey people?
New Agey people.
Okay.
I found a few of those, and honestly, those were more. They seemed like they were just telling a story, like they had read something or they were reading something, and it was just hard to believe those other ones.
It's hard to believe those, huh? Why was it hard to believe? Because we've talked about this for several weeks. You know, we've been
Well,
sitting here
a lot
evaluating accounts,
Yeah, a lot of them were like that girl last week that we went over,
trying to spin a yarn.
where they would spin, you know, where there was one where it was a lady was excited to meet the devil in her NDE,
She was excited to meet the devil.
and I didn't listen to the whole thing, but she got to meet. She went to hell and she met Satan, and they had a conversation, and he basically was like, I can make you this deal, and she took the deal, and that's about when I clicked off of it. I was like, this is not good.
So she made a
Yeah.
crossroads-like thing on her NDE,
Yeah,
during her NDE.
so she could come back.
Did she see any demons or anything?
No, I don't think so. But
Well, let's see if we can find something else here, because that video did not go into it nearly as long as I thought it would. So,
do you know anything about Randy K?
Randy K, I do not. I do not.
He had an NDE, and he started looking into all these things, and he's got some stuff on NDEs, a lot of stuff. He's basically poured his whole life into it. I could send you a video from him about.
Well, I got another video, a little quick minute-long here thing from Michael Egner. Let's see if he brings up somebody other than Pam Reynolds.
Cross cultures. People often
Let's see. This is Michael Egner talking further about NDEs here, so let's see what he has to say.
near-death experiences are surprisingly common. There's no question. There's been probably tens of millions of people over human history have had things like this. And there tends to be patterns to them that occur across cultures. People often feel that they're leaving their body. They often see their body, and they will hover in the vicinity of where they have died. And they often describe a kind of a tunnel experience where they go down a passageway and they come into a different world. And the world they come into is often very beautiful, although there are some negative experiences. There are people who have hellish near-death experiences. They're probably the most common ones are the pleasant ones. And people go to the other side of the tunnel and they see a beautiful world. They often will have some interaction with the divine figure. They generally will meet dead friends and relatives. A fascinating aspect of near-death experiences is that, to my knowledge, there's never been a report of someone having a near-death experience where they met anyone on the other side who wasn't dead. That is, the only people they meet are dead people.
Well, here's Gary Habermas. Let's see what Gary Habermas has to say.
This woman,
Gary Habermas is another apologist. He talks about NDEs and other types of evidences for Christianity as well. So let's see what he has to say here on the subject.
has she's being operated on. She has a near-death experience. She's up above her body. She's looking down. She's watching herself. And sometimes they don't even know it's them because they identify with who's up by the ceiling. That's their point of consciousness. And on the top of this medical device that was in the room, hospitals often rivet numbers like offices do to keep track of typewriters and to keep track of things. She looked down and there was a 12-digit number riveted onto the top of this medical thing. And she said, I'm OCD. And so I memorized the 12-digit number. As soon as she comes to, she says to the nurse, write this down. Now, I'm not saying this is a number, but it's like, write this down, 675-21600. 12 numbers. And the nurse wrote it down. And they were later moving the apparatus out of the room. And the nurse jumps in and says, whoa, 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 wait a minute. Let me get my sheet out. Wow, the number's exactly right. Now, she sees that in a state, and many of these people, when you have a cardiac arrest with ventricular fibrillation, this particular species of cardiac arrest, you have no measurable heart waves, and within an average of 15 seconds, you have no brain waves. So if she was out of her body for as long as 5 minutes, she theoretically has no heart or brain waves. How does she know to repeat that data? How does she know what's up there? So that's one well-evidenced one. Boy, people ask me, they'll say, well, I'll say, what kind of evidence do you want? I'll give you. Another one is a real fast one. A guy had surgery. He was up above his body watching the doctors do this, but he got maybe a little bored. I don't know. He started drifting a little bit, looking around. He went through a wall into the next surgical ward, and he watched a guy having his leg amputated. So he gives an explanation of what happens in the room with the leg amputation because I saw it, but you're on that bed. Yeah, but I'm telling you, I saw it. How do you know? Here's some explanation. I'm making up what he might have said, but he could have said, well, all the nurses in the room had white uniforms on, except for this one. She had a pale green uniform on. I mean, something like that. Or these are actual cases. In one, a person dropped a beaker on the floor and it broke, and the person watched it. Or in another one, a woman's pin fell off her dress, and a doctor stepped on it. And the near-death person said, I know who lost the pen, and I can name the doctor who stepped on it because I saw it. So these are data, and many times in the absence of heart and brain, any kind of activity, measurable. And so it seems like we're talking about, here's the point, we're talking about consciousness beyond the initial death of heart and brain. Now, it's near death because the person comes back from it, but during those minutes while they're out, it's highly evidential.
Okay, so there's a few evidence. Let's look at somebody else's perspective, somebody who probably doesn't agree. Let's look at the website.
When I first started looking into near-death experience,
and I want to point out something right away. You can already kind of tell what this person's going to think. They're already teasing their opinion out. Can you guess what... Trevor, can you read the title from where you're at, sir?
Are near-death experiences real? Here's what science has to say. Dr. Bruce Grayson for Big Think.
Now, do you think they're going to be for? Do you think they're going to believe them in them? Or do you think they're going to say, nah, there's some other explanation?
He's probably going to come up with some scientific reason why they're not real.
I'm betting the same thing. Do you want to tell me why you came to that conclusion, sir?
Believe the science.
That's exactly what I said. I saw. Let's see what the science has to say. That's the exact same thing. I read that and I'm like, oh, they're gonna come up with some bull crap. So,
Science.
So let's see what the science has to say.
experiences back in the late 1970s, I assumed that there would be some physiological explanation for that. What I found over the decades was that the various simple explanations we could think of, like lack of oxygen, drugs given to the people, and so forth, don't pan out. The data do not support them. And furthermore, the phenomena of NDEs, of near-death experiences, seem to defy a simple materialistic explanation. When we first started presenting this material,
I'm already surprised. We haven't got to the end, but I'm like, what? You're going to admit that you're going to admit that the regular explanations don't work? What? Really? I'm shocked. Huh. All right. Well, let's see. Let's see if he holds to that.
In medical conferences, there would be a polite silence in the audience. And now, in the 21st century, when we do this, it's rare that doctors don't stand up in the audience and say, let me share my experience with you. So it's pretty well accepted now that these are common experiences that people have all the time and that have profound effects. There's still, of course, a lot of controversy about what causes them, but not about the fact that they exist and are fairly common.
What are near-death experiences?
I'm Bruce Grayson. I'm a professor emeritus of psychiatry and neurobehavioral
that's the problem.
sciences at
Huh?
That's the problem. He's a professor.
Well, he hasn't misrepresented anything yet, so he might be straight with everybody. We'll see. I want to see what he has to say.
the University of Virginia Medical School. And I've recently come out with a book called After. A doctor explores what near-death experiences reveal about life and beyond. Near-death experiences are profound, subjective experiences that many people...
Well,
The
there you go, right
beyond.
there. First buzzword. Subjective. It ain't real. It's in your head. We don't know what it is, but it's in your head. That's what
It's all hallucination.
That's the first loaded term right there. So he teased everybody like he was gonna affirm it, and now we're gonna start getting into whatever his explanation is.
will have when they come close to death, or sometimes when they are in fact pronounced dead. And they include such difficult to explain phenomena as a sense of leaving the physical body, reviewing one's entire life, encountering some other entities that aren't physically present, and at some point coming to a point of no return beyond which they can't continue and still come back to life. When they return, they often are profoundly changed by this experience. As I started my psychiatric training, I started being confronted by patients' reports of things that I couldn't explain. One happened to me when I was just a few weeks into my training. I was asked to see a patient who had overdosed in the emergency room. And I was in the cafeteria when the page came in, and I was eating dinner, and the page startled me, and I dropped my fork, spilling spaghetti sauce on my tie. Couldn't wipe it off, so I just covered it over with a lab coat so no one would see it. And then I went down to the emergency room to see the patient, and she was completely unconscious. I could not revive her. But her roommate was waiting to see me down the hall in another room. So I went down to the other room, talked to the roommate for about 15 or 20 minutes, and there was no air conditioning back in the 70s, so I unbuttoned my lab coat so I wouldn't sweat so much, exposing the stain for about 10 minutes or so. I then went back to see the patient. She was still unconscious. When I went to see her in the morning, I introduced myself, and she stopped me and said, "I know who you are. I remember you from last night." That puzzled me, so I said something like, "Well, I'm surprised. I thought you were unconscious when I saw you last night." And she looked at me and said, "Not in my room. I saw you talking to my roommate down the hall." She sensed my confusion and started to tell me about the conversation I had with her roommate, where we were sitting, what we were talking about, and finally she said, "And you had a striped tie on with a red stain on it." That just blew me away. I didn't know how to deal with that. I couldn't think of any logical reason, any explanation for how she...
That reference is actually in Michael Egner's book. He does talk about that story, just for clarity
story?
there.
The same story?
Yeah, the same story about the spaghetti sauce on the tie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is an account that Egner actually mentions.
She could have known about that spaghetti stain. Nobody had seen it except her roommate, and she hadn't talked to the roommate since she came into the hospital. As a scientist, I knew I had to study this. It didn't make any sense to me. But scientists don't run away from things they don't understand. They run towards them. I never expected to spend so much time looking into near-death experiences. I thought at first it was just a strange anomaly. I'd spend a few years looking at them, find the physiological explanation, and put it behind me. I collected about 1,000 cases that people had sent to me about their own near-death experiences. Quickly realized that the stories I was getting from people who volunteered their stories to me were the same as the ones from people I interviewed in the hospital. We studied the physiological events around the near-death experience, psychological traits of the experiencers, and so forth, trying to find some logical explanation for these events. Most of us are taught that the mind is what the brain does, that all our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions, our memories are all created by the brain. However, that's not the whole story. And we have hundreds and hundreds of experiences that occur during a cardiac arrest or deep anesthesia when we know the brain is not capable of functioning well enough to create complex thoughts and feelings and memories. Most near-death experiencers say that in the near-death experience, their senses were incredibly heightened, and they often report hearing sounds they'd never heard on Earth and seeing colors that they'd never seen before. And when they come back, they don't know how to describe these things because there aren't words for them to describe them. One person said to me, it's like trying to draw an odor with a crayon. But they talk about their senses being so much more vivid in the NDE, and that gives the experience a sense of being more real than this world is.
That is something that I've heard a lot. Is their senses are heightened. Like a lot of them that I listen to, they all say that the colors were just so vibrant, and there were more colors than what we normally see.
Yeah. I think we might owe Big Think an apology. They seem to be giving a pretty honest shake of the whole thing. They're not telling us, oh, it's drugs. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, it's lack of oxygen or something.
I thought when he mentioned that she overdosed, he was going to blame it on the drugs, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, the second I saw science in the title, I was like, oh, here we go. But I stand corrected. The science. That's just all I hear anymore.
We'll both stand corrected.
Huh?
We'll both stand corrected.
Yeah, well, that's okay. This seems like a pretty good shake of it. So we got about 2 minutes to go. So let's finish her up.
Most near-death experiencers are pretty much the same around the world and through the centuries. Pliny the Elder wrote about a case like this in ancient Rome in the 1st century. We've gotten examples of near-death experiences from Western Europe, from the Middle East, from Asian cultures, Hindu Buddhist cultures, and from early cultures, Australian Aborigines and Native American societies that sound just like the stories we have today. However, how they describe these phenomena is influenced by their cultural background. For example, people all around the world will talk about encountering a warm, loving being of light that radiates unconditional love towards them. And if you're talking to someone who is raised in the United States, they may identify this as God or sometimes Jesus, whereas someone who is in a Hindu or Buddhist culture will not use those terms. Some of the lessons.
I wish you would say what those terms are, because this is something we keep coming across, and we need to look at like NDEs from other cultures, because that's kind of been a wall. Is you hear that other cultures are like describing them differently and seeing different figures or what have you. But
well, maybe I'll look back into them.
Yeah, we need to find something like that to really kind of get a sense.
There were some in like Asian countries.
I
wasn't sure where, but it was all in Asian language, so it's like I can't read this and work at the same time because most of the stuff I'm listening to at work.
Wagner had an interesting theory on the subject. He was basically saying, because he's Catholic, so he was basically postulating that as you're getting towards the other side, let's say, like people are seeing what they understand before they finally cross over. That might be an explanation to it. I don't know. I don't know how that really meshes with theology, because I grew up cessationist, so we didn't believe anything supernatural happened ever. It was kind of the upbringing. So these guys were like, oh, it's the brain dying, but that clearly doesn't work. So all those neurons. I think Michael Egner again makes the point in the book. It's all those sensations where the brain dies. It creates confusion, a lack of clarity. Nobody says that they're seeing things more vividly or whatever. Their senses are not enhanced in any way as they're dying. Everything becomes very chaotic and confusing by all accounts. So yeah, the idea that NDEs are the result of the brain shutting down doesn't really hold.
No, not really.
So yep. Yeah, so if you could find one from another culture, that would be maybe a way to end this for perhaps next week or something.
Or next week.
Because I think we really need to hone in on that. So what do you think? I mean, you being a Christian, me being a Christian, what do you think? Everybody's seeing their own kind of cultural flavor, but it's the same basic pattern. What do you think's going on?
I think, you're gonna see what you believe in. You know, part of it, you'll see what you'll believe in, but at the same time, you're trying to make sense of what you're seeing while you're seeing it. So if you've never believed in anything like that, like if you're an atheist and you don't believe in anything, and then you see a light at the end of the tunnel, or you meet your relatives, then I'll bet that would be crazy.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is people trying to, like you said, explain what they're having a hard time understanding. You're trying to compute things that are basically new, so you're basically left with things you understand in your culture and your time, and you use those details to kind of fill in the gaps.
Which is probably why we see a lot of mostly just, Christians and other religious people having NDEs like this, because they understand it a little bit because they're already into some sort of spiritualness. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have to kind of discuss that more in the future. I kind of think that one way that you could tell which religion is correct in light of NDEs is basically what we know from a theological perspective rather than an anecdotal. So unconditional love, that's a Christian concept. The idea of a life review, that's a Christian concept. So you're seeing, even though they're seeing different divine figures, you are still getting like the basic steps of what Christianity predicts. Now, I'm not familiar with, from what I understand, there isn't a life review in Buddhism or something, but that is a pretty unique feature in Christianity. So I think looking at those patterns and kind of how that lines up with Christianity might be a way to tell. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to see someone talk about, a lot of people say their life will flash before their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to listen to an NDE about that, because I don't remember actually coming across anybody that talked about their whole life was shown to them in their last moments or anything like that.
Well, it happens after they leave the body. They go up to the light or whatever. They usually meet like a divine being, or they're in a room or a realm of some kind, and then they relive their life. But this is like well after they've left their body, usually. The whole life flashing before your eyes thing, that's like happening as you're dying. I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody going through that either.
I have to look into that.
Yeah. Well, I thought we were done. I guess we're not.
Hey, keep going.
Yeah, we'll have to keep going down this rabbit hole. But I think I'm onto something with looking at the actual theology and like what the religions predict when you die. What all the religions actually predict that process is like. And I think from what I'm seeing, Christianity has the most accurate pattern, let's say.
Yeah.
So, but we'll leave it there. You're going to look for NDE from another culture next week.
Okay.
Sweet.
Unless we have a guest.
That's right. We might have a guest next week. Next week. We'll see. See if it works out. All right. Well, I think we're done with part 1. What do you think?
I think part 1 is done.
All right. We're going to do part 1. Guys, if you're on the live stream, stay with us. We're moving on to part 2. If you are watching this after the fact, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Faith, Fiction, and Folklore. If you did, we would love it if you would subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Rumble. We can also be found on X, Instagram, and Facebook. And we are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Thank you again very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.